millions of vulnerable Americans struggle to get reliable transportation to their medical appointments. That's why I started MedHall. Citi launched the Impact Fund to invest in both women and entrepreneurs of color like me so I can realize my vision and give everything I've got to my company and my community.
I got you.
For the love of people, for the love of community, for the love of progress. Citi.
Welcome to the PaleyFest Fall TV Previews. I'm Janelle Riley, Deputy Awards and Features Editor at Variety, and I'm delighted to be your host for this special conversation celebrating Peacock's Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol. Thanks to PaleyFest's official card and official sponsor, Citi, for helping to make this event possible. Today, we're thrilled to welcome the members of the series' gifted creative team and cast. Please welcome writer and executive producer Jay Beatty,
Hello.
Writer and executive producer Dan Dworkin, executive producer Dan Brown, and series star Ashley Zuckerman. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. Whenever I have people as accomplished as you all are, I actually like to go back to the beginning and ask, what was your first job in this industry? Dan Brown, the first time you felt like you could call yourself a writer, or Ashley, the first acting job where you felt like, you were an actor now. And let's start with Ashley.
Wow. I think that that goalpost kept changing. I don't know if maybe recently I've started feeling that, okay, I'm an actor, but I think, my first job in America was a show called Manhattan. And I remember sitting in the chair there, and there was the way the set moved and the type of work that was being done and the people I was surrounded by that really made me think, maybe I'll be able to do this forever. And this is what I'd like to do. I think that was also it. I was like, this is clearly what I would love to do. I think that question hadn't been answered previously.
And Dan Brown, for you, were you someone who was like writing short stories and, kindergarten or?
Yeah. I dictated my first book to my mom when I was 5. I couldn't write it. I told her the story and I drew pictures for it. I still have it. It's called The Giraffe, the Pig, and the Pants on Fire. Obviously a thriller. But, it's kind of like Ashley. Like, I think for most authors, you have days when you say, I'm not a writer, am I? This is too hard. I don't know what I'm doing. So I still get that all the time.
Has anyone pressured you to release that book? Because I bet it would be a bestseller.
Actually, there has been some pressure, but it really is so terrible that it will never see the light of day.
The giraffe, did the drawing of the giraffe inspire giraffe in the
you know what? Maybe. Actually, this is funny. I mean, Wild Symphony came around maybe because of the giraffe. Who knows?
There you go. Dan Dworkin, what about for you? When was the first time you felt you could call yourself a writer or a producer?
Officially, when Jay and I got our first job in the Dick Wolf camp. Prior to that, I was making movies on my parents' video camera in high school. And I won the first and last Grossmont High School Film Festival with a movie called Death by Power Tools that I shot and starred in and wrote. But yeah, Jay and I, we got a job on a show called Dragnet 17-ish years ago. And that was an amazing experience. Had an amazing kind of legendary showrunner, Waylon Green, who, among other things, wrote The Wild Bunch. And we learned an enormous amount in a very short amount of time. We were completely just thrown onto the set, having no idea what we were doing, trial by fire, and wrote for the first 12 episodes. And that was it. We've been working ever since.
Jay, same for you. Would it be that show?
It would be. I mean, prior to that, I think I wanted to direct when I was in college, and someone told me the best way to do it was to start writing and then direct your own stuff. And then I just sort of, I kept writing, and I haven't really directed anything, but like most people, I had a couple scripts I put in the drawer after they were done because they were terrible. And I got lucky. I wrote a freelance episode of The New Adventures of Robin Hood.
I think before Dan and I hooked up, and I didn't actually know they produced the episode because they got canceled until years later. But I still didn't feel like I was a bona fide writer, after that. It wasn't until Dan and I, linked up and creatively we were able to be very productive together. Like you said, on Dragnet, it was a trial by fire, but we very quickly kind of rose through the ranks, and we've just been working nonstop since that, which is quite a while ago. I won't put a number on it.
I already did.
And you're here with The Lost Symbol, which is going to be everybody's new addiction, I think. And I'd love to start at the beginning with Dan Brown, because the adventures of Robert Langdon have been read by millions, if not billions, of readers across the world, already been made into 3 hit films. Why do you think this character and these stories have resonated so much with audiences?
It's interesting. So many heroes are, martial arts experts or have guns or high government positions. Robert Langdon's a teacher. And I grew up on the campus of a prep school, and all my heroes were teachers, and I grew up as, very geeky kid. And I think it's the noblest profession. And so Ashley plays in some ways an everyman, but in another way, a superhero, just somebody who can use his mind to get out of tight situations.
And Dan Dworkin and Jay, what interested you in bringing The Lost Symbol to television, specifically, in this series format?
I'll start. It just has, there are wonderful layers in the book that we felt were worth exploring and spooling out in a way that you wouldn't be able to do in a 2-hour movie. Certain backstories that we can get into maybe a little bit later, but the story of Zachary Solomon and the whole flashback kind of ready element of that, and just the story of the entire Solomon family and Langdon's inclusion or exclusion in that family. It just seemed like a really fertile tapestry. It just it begged to be explored and deepened, and there were just a lot of natural opportunities, it felt like.
Yeah, I think that's what was intriguing to us, was the concept of Robert Langdon's first adventure and using the Lost Symbol was really intriguing for us, and the way in which we could expand Dan Brown's universe into a show. Like Dan said, like with the 2-hour movie, they make great movies, but there's so much, it's just dense with story and layered, and the opportunity to expand that into a television show was hard to resist.
So obviously the show doesn't work without the correct leading man. Ashley, I'm curious, how familiar with you were the character of Robert Langdon or the stories themselves, and how did the role find its way to you?
I don't know if the guys are aware of this. I hadn't read the books before auditioning, which,
you know what? I've got to go.
Okay.
Which later on turned out to be a blessing, because then I had 3,000 pages of information and of research to sift through about who this guy was. And it was sort of a wonderful way to meet those books and to use and to come in with a lens of, okay, we're starting the story at the beginning, and all of these threads that we can pull, these idiosyncrasies, who he will be, we can sort of find them and pull at them a little bit. So it was incredible, like, way to interact with that material. And a thrill. And then in terms of, I think that's more a question for the guys, how it got to me. That I don't know, but it's sort of it seemed to fit from early on. I think it was more that my read on it just happened to be what they're looking for. Like I think the pool of talent, it's so big in America that it's never about like the right actor for the job. It's about who's got the right soul for something like this. And especially when there's so much that we figure out as we're moving, that we learn about the character as we interface with the material, that I think perhaps that there was something in me that they just saw was a right fit for him.
Yeah, let me ask.
Ashley, I haven't had a chance to say this to you, but I've been watching the dailies, and you're just absolutely fantastic, just perfect. Really, really happy.
that's I actually don't have much of a way to process that.
Yeah.
It's like,
now we're gonna have problems, Dan. Thank you very much. Now you've inflated him.
They asked me not. No,
Actually, I'm curious, Dan Brown, were you involved in the casting process at all as a producer?
No, I was probably told I had some sort of influence, but I have learned from making 3 movies that it's, you leave it to the people who understand the craft and the people who have cast before. And I sort of feel like my role is in scripting and trying to make sure that the heartbeat of the novel is beating at the right rhythm while I don't want to call them liberties, but while other avenues are being explored that aren't in the novel or things get shifted, which actually makes the process for me really fun to watch, Jay and Dan's take on the story, Ashley's take on the character. It's sort of a new experience.
I mean, Ashley, I think maybe it's a good thing that you weren't that familiar with the books, or because you probably didn't get in your head about, stepping into the very large shoes of Tom Hanks, maybe.
I think so. I mean, it's funny how by every measure, this should have felt like just a mountain that was impossible to climb. But I think it was because both, like the wealth, the fact that everyone that every reader connects with this character and loves the character is useful to us because we're doing a prequel. Like we're we're leaning on those opinions of the character, that everything we're doing will lead to whoever this, the reader connects with. And so that's freeing in a way. And then the fact that it's a joy to be able to, what Dan Dworkin said before, was like to look for threads or like story elements that we can kind of delve into. And it's sort of like The Lost Symbol. It's sort of, I think, luck in a way that it hadn't been made into a movie yet, because it is the perfect place to start the story. The fact that he's so invested, it is a family of sorts to him that the story is around. The fact that symbols are so key, the language of the Masons, there's so much about it that's so right for a prequel. And so I think that there was just so many elements that it just felt like a very right process rather than something that we had to surmount.
And Jay and Dan Dworkin, I would love to know about, sort of what you were looking for in casting your Robert Langdon, but also the rest of this amazing cast, because you have Eddie Izzard and Valerie Corey and Bo Knapp. It is just an outstanding ensemble from top to bottom. Yeah,
it is. And having done a lot of television before, it doesn't always lay out that way. It's really, we meet with our directors obviously a lot before they come in and direct the various episodes. And the first thing we talk about is the actors. And the first thing we say is, you're like really lucky. And we're really lucky. At the risk of turning this into a giant love fest, which is never any fun, we're really blessed with an excellent kind of, there's a lot of texture, they feel like real people. They look and sound different from it feels like Jay and I, whenever we cast a show, our goal is always to make people feel real. We never want the most gorgeous, we don't, for lack of a better way to categorize it, we would love not to cast a broadcast TV show, a traditional broadcast TV show, where maybe sometimes you're looking at appearance more than other things. In this case, they're a beautiful cast, but they feel very real to us. And Ashley, in terms of how we came to each of them, it was a mixed bag. Ashley was someone who the network suggested. And initially we were like, oh yeah, Succession, I know that guy. Love that show. And it's a fascinating bit of alchemy. You never quite know what you have, I think, sometimes until you roll cameras on that first day. Even if you've done a ton of auditions and you kind of look at it in the right frame and you're looking at it on the monitor, and literally on the first day, I think we were shooting the flashback in Peters. Yeah. The now cut flashback, but and Ashley had to do some comedy. and what amounts to comedy for Robert Langdon, and we weren't even sure if he could do it. Like, we're like, I don't know, this wasn't in the audition or whatever, and like it was just magic.
Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just add to that, like the role of Langdon was challenging, and we had seen Ashley on Succession where he was terrific, but I always thought, you're stepping into a role where you're the character who's the smartest person in the room. And you see that a lot on television. But I think you have to capture, and what Dan Brown does so well is the gravity of any given situation. There's always something going on that feels important. And the actor has to give that. It's not always on the text. The actor has to bring that to it. And they also has to, because he's young, Langdon, he's stepping into a world he's never been in before and has to play a fish out of water. So to be both the smartest man in the room and the fish out of water is at odds with itself. So to try to capture the conflict of that in each scene is very difficult. I always thought, and like Dan said, on day one, I've always felt Ashley just was locked in, and I'm not sure what the process was or how we got there, but from day one, we just knew he was locked in, and we just let him go.
Well, actually, Ashley, I would love to know about your process and your research. How do you prepare to play a symbologist? Aside from the books themselves.
Yeah, I think I started going down the road of trying to understand as much as Robert Langdon understands about the world, or knowing as much, and that seemed like sort of a ridiculous task. And I think that was just sort of what I then thought was like, it's more about, I think what's key to Langdon is that he understands the reason behind myths and stories. He understands the history that motivates the things enough to give doubt to the myths that get presented to him. And I think that's the actual piece of him that I needed to understand. I needed to have the confidence of understanding why it is I don't believe something just because someone says it is, or because he feels it himself. So he might feel something, but he's not going to allow himself to feel that because of what it is he knows. And that was the main piece of him that I needed to understand before doing this. And then aside from that, it's just mining the books. I ended up like making myself they're over there, but like an abridged version of every book, just with like clues about the person that he will become. And then there are things in there that like it's because Dan Brown launches Robert Langdon into the story so much that there's a lot of the history that Robert Langdon doesn't have time to sit on. He has to keep moving on to the next thing, but there's often these little clues. And, it starts with this idea that he's a bachelor, and it's something that he really holds dear to himself. But there's something very interesting about that as well. Like there's also the flip side of that is perhaps a loneliness. And so I thought that there was, there's a lot of little clues about the person who Robert Langdon says that he is later on, which I thought was interesting to just unravel. So those were the two major things. And then after that, throwing it all away and interacting with the scripts, which just, go on a journey themselves.
Did you think about doing any escape rooms?
I did my first escape room the day before we tested, which was the
Really?
day.
Okay,
Yeah.
I would love to know if Dan Brown does escape rooms, because you would be out in like 3 minutes.
I've never ever done one. In Amsterdam in the airport, I didn't even know it was there. I passed, I guess it was an Inferno or no, it was Origin. It was an Origin escape room.
Wow.
And I decided I would just keep walking. It'd be pretty embarrassing not to be able to get out.
Right. Amazing. We actually have a question from our festival sponsor, Citi. This is for Jay Beatty and Dan Dworkin. What was the most difficult part with bringing this novel to life, but still making the show your own?
Oh, wow. The most difficult part.
I think it's just you have to confront the fact that you're adapting a book and Dan has legions of fans. And, you feel a sense of duty to be faithful to the material, but you're also understanding that you're taking it from one medium to another and exploring it in a way that even the movies couldn't. And so trying to have the confidence to expand, like Dan said, different avenues of the story, and take certain liberties, was, I think, the most challenging part. And Dan's been such a terrific collaborator, that it's just made the process a joy, like the whole way along.
I would say one thing for me, like super specific personal thing, like I am a huge genre fan. And like, I love, like when I read the book, or reread the book, I started thinking about it. Like my mind goes in all kinds of X-Files directions, like just by default. And so I had to rein a lot of that in. Like, I'm not gonna say it was difficult, it was actually fun to find the right balance. And that's a place where Dan Brown comes in a lot, because sometimes there's a balance you need to strike in this world, in the Robert Langdon, Dan Brown world, where everything needs to, at the end of the day, be grounded to a certain degree. It can be heightened, but needs to be ultimately provable scientifically. You can't have anything overtly supernatural, which is great. And anytime we think we're getting into something that is scientifically inexplicable, or maybe a little too heightened, we'll call Dan up, we'll send him an email, we'll say, what do you think about this? And he'll bring us a little bit back down to earth, be sure we're in the right strike zone. And that's been like a really good resource.
Dan Brown, I'd love to know about working in television. What does this medium allow you to do that maybe books or movies haven't yet?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, nothing is more flexible than a novel. That's sort of the arena where you can mount battles of thousands of people for the same cost as writing a scene in Denny's with two people talking. So you don't really have, and you can write them just as quickly. So, and the other thing about novels is you move in and out of flashbacks effortlessly, and that's very difficult on film. It's funny that the movies were a challenge. They were an absolute blast. I was very happy with them, but they were challenged because the books are big books. There's a lot in them. It's tough to make a 2-hour movie. And I remember when Ron Howard showed me the first cut of the Da Vinci Code, I think it was about 3.5 hours long. And I said, it feels like it was about 1% of the novel. He said, oh, you wait till we get this down to 2.5 hours. And the wonderful thing about making this on TV is we just have all of this room. And I'm not sure how many people get to do that, to create a different telling of a novel without the pressure of having to compress everything. We can actually expand it. So that's been just been a lot of fun.
Well, I want to remind everyone that they can see The Lost Symbol on Peacock this September. Thank you for joining us for the special PaleyFest Fall TV Previews conversation with members of the wonderful team behind Peacock's Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol. Thanks to PaleyFest's official card and official sponsor, Citi. And you can learn more about the Paley Center by visiting paleycenter.org. Thank you so much and take care.